Hello, everyone. Welcome to my TikTok live. Oh my goodness. This phone is going crazy. Sorry. Thanks so much for coming. So I gotta fix this. Where'd you go? It looks super dark for some reason. All right, let's see. Thanks so much for coming to my, there we go, TikTok and YouTube live. We're gonna be working on Mildred's Resistance. Hey, Tammy, thanks so much for coming in. All right, let's get started. We are actually on chapter 14 today, and I'm hoping to do, I think, 4, maybe 5 chapters. So it'll be fun to get going. Here we are. Chapter 14, Handfasted. Mildred's first year as librarian passed like a recurring dream. She shelved books, taught reading classes to the maids, helped Stella with hand-fasting preparations, discussed political history with Evelyn over tea, and enjoyed the sweetness of living life with her best friends again. The harrowing memory of Mother's unexpected death faded, losing grip. Sorry. With her best friends again. The harrowing memory of Mother's unexpected death faded, losing its grip on her heart. She thrived in the organized structure of the library, wrote Jordan weekly letters, and shared debates over dinner with Martin every night. There we go. Sorry, there's all these crazy things. Hey, Robert. Hey, Busby. Thanks for coming, everyone. We're just doing chapter 14 of Mildred's Resistance. Perfect, she said to herself one bright afternoon after winter had faded. It's a perfect spring day. She stopped walking in the middle of the Jameses' dirt driveway and pulled in a long, sweet draught of cherry blossom-tinged air. The afternoon sun warmed her face, washing away the cold, drafty days of her first winter cooped up in the chilly stone halls of Chatham Castle. A soft spring breeze drifted by, releasing blooms from the trees in a waterfall of petals. It felt wonderful to step away from the library for a while. Sorry, there was some dialogue coming up I'd forgotten about. Isn't this a beautiful day for a hand-fasting ceremony? She asked Martin. He walked quietly at her side, as if they were taking their weekly stroll through the gardens. Sorry, I'm going to redo that section because that phrase kind of went weird. Oh my gosh, where is my spot? I hate it when I do this. There we go. I always lose my spot. It's frustrating. For the library for a while. Isn't this a beautiful day for a hand-fasting ceremony? She asked Martin. He walked quietly at her side, as if they were taking their weekly stroll through the gardens at Chatham. Yes, he said, glancing at the pockets of white-blossomed cherry trees surrounding the Jameses' imposing estate. It feels wonderful to be in the sun again. Mildred fell back into a comfortable silence, grateful that she could just be with Martin, and not feel as if she had to entertain him with small talk. They approached a red-brick mansion ringed by cherry orchards on the left and apple orchards on the right. Trees surrounded the estate in an endless skirt of blossoms and perfume. Freshly scrubbed windows sparkled in the late sunshine, and tables laden with food stretched across the open lawn. I used to sleep over here in the summer when I had a break from Mrs. Jane's. It should be Miss Jane's, not Mrs. Jane's, so I'm going to redo that. I used to sleep over here in the summer when I had a break from Miss Jane's. It was a lovely time, Mildred said with a fond smile, waving to Agatha, Stella's plump, bright-eyed mother. Thank you for coming with me, Martin. I loathe meeting new people. At least now I have someone with whom to sit and won't have to avoid small talk with strangers. He laughed. The more I learn about you, the more miraculous I consider our friendship to be. I love meeting new people. She sent him a sidelong glance. Very odd. Martin laughed again. Dale and I have known each other since he joined the Guardians, so it was my pleasure to come. Oh, how strange. I never expected to see him here. Martin had paused mid-step, facing the opposite side of the yard. A tall pole pierced the sky, decorated on top with ribbons fluttering in a gentle breeze. Who? Mildred. I tripped over asked, and I almost said, so I have to redo it. Who? Mildred asked. Mildred, not Mildred. Who? Mildred asked, trying to follow his gaze. Councilmember Grant is here. He's standing by Evelyn. Martin motioned toward them with a jerk of his hand. Head. Oh my gosh, what is my deal today? A jerk of his head, not his hand. Martin motioned toward them with a jerk of his head. He doesn't seem as if he's enjoying himself, does he? Evelyn must have brought him. I can't imagine why else he'd be here. He's her beau of sorts, Mildred said. Neither of them will admit it. I think because they both want to flirt with whomever they want, but Evie spends a lot of time with him. Grant a beau? Martin's face wrinkled. I doubt it. I can't imagine he'd ever like anyone more than he liked himself. Sounds like he'd be perfect for Evelyn. Speaking of your friend, there she is now. He gestured to a group of girls surrounding Evelyn's perfectly coiffed red hair, her old-school chums. Mildred recognized a few of the faces and felt no desire to interfere. She hadn't been overly fond of the girls from Miss Mabel's School for Girls whenever she had visited and veered away from them now, doubly grateful for Martin's company. Grant stood a few steps away from Evelyn and her crowd. A cheroot dangled from his lips, which he removed only to take a sip of wine. The young women spoke in near shouts, each competing to be heard over the others as they debated the way the ribbons should weave around the pole. I haven't officially met Grant yet, Mildred admitted. Evelyn doesn't really bring him around. It's like she wants to keep us separate from him or something. Nor do I see him around the castle because, well, I don't really go out much. You aren't missing anything, Martin said under his breath. He's run the Bickersmill covens for a few years. He met Donovan while at the tailor's, and so enchanted the high priest with his droll wit and penchant for expensive attire that Donovan hired him as council member the moment the next slot... I'm going to redo that because the pitch of Martin's cadence sounds too much like Mildred's. That Donovan hired him as council member the moment the next slot became available. You're joking, right? Mildred asked, her tone dry, mouth curled in disgust. The description of her tone, I think, doesn't match what I did, so I want to redo the way she speaks to match the description. You're joking, right? Mildred asked, her tone dry, mouth curled in disgust. Martin shook his head, his lips pursed in a way that suggested he wished he was. Dolph and I have worked with Grant on a few issues in his covens. He's amiable enough, and certainly has the good looks to back up his sociability, but he cares nothing for business. He delegates most of his job to other witches. A pasted smile slipped across Martin's face when Grant hailed him, striding over on long, sure legs. Grant appeared to be a brash 30-something witch who smelled of tobacco leaves. His chiseled, fresh-shaven jaw gave him a handsome, if sardonic, expression that left Mildred annoyed. Yes, he'd be perfect for Evelyn. Grant, Martin said jovially, taking his forearm. Despite herself, Mildred was impressed with Martin's display. She could never act so pleased to see someone so unexpected. It took all her energy some days just to visit Stella and Evelyn. It's good to see a fellow male witch here. The fellow male sounded funny. It's like fellow male. I want to redo it. Stella and Evelyn. It's good to see a fellow male witch here. Grant laughed and dropped his cheroot to the grass, where he grounded in with his heel. All right, so we're going to voice Grant, but I don't think I've ever voiced him before, which means I just look him up and listen to him. I'm pretty sure I haven't voiced Grant. If I did, he has kind of a very droll, quick tone. It's kind of how I picture him. So I look into my voice library. I don't have it. So I'm going to practice a few times before we record, which I don't do very often on here. Hey, Garrett. What's up, my friend? It's so fun to have you. You guys are awesome. Okay, so we're going to practice Grant. Grant is a politician, kind of upper class echelon, Chatham City kind of guy. So when I picture him, I picture a little more elevated tone, kind of like, so the words are, yes, you and I will let all the ladies simper and giggle. So Grant would say something like, yes, you and I will let all the ladies simper and giggle for a while so they can get it out of their systems. The good gods know Evelyn loves the attention. A little bit more dry, kind of witty. So I like that. So we're going to go, there we go. We're going to go with that. So I have to note it in here. Oh, hi, Heather. Heather and Garrett. Robert, oh my gosh, you guys are all the best. It's so fun to see you here. We're doing Grants. Yes, you and I will let all the ladies simper and giggle for a while so they can get it out of their systems. The good gods know Evelyn loves the attention. Enough about them. What do you think of this new jacket? Is it all right for a hand-fasting ceremony? All right, so he comes out very annoying, if you ask me. I wouldn't want to listen to him for very long, but that is just so Grant, right, Garrett and Heather? I'm going to listen to it one more time. He's got kind of an arrogant drawl. He's got kind of an arrogant drawl that just really fits Grant. So we're gonna call that good, and move on with the next one. He's gonna be fun to voice. Martin's polite expression didn't change. Looks very nice. Grant adjusted the sleeves. I found a witch in Ashley that charges exorbitant rates, but makes me look like a god, so it's worth it. A rustle in the grass just behind Mildred shifted her attention from Grant's less than fascinating conversation to the sensation that someone stood just behind her. All right, so right there I do a breath pause for emphasis, but I want to hear if I like it. No, I don't like it. So I said Grant's less than fascinating, and I don't like it. I like a different flow, so I'm going to redo it. A rustle in the grass just behind Mildred shifted her attention from Grant's less than fascinating conversation to the sensation that someone stood just behind her. No one could be seen. Millie! Stella's hushed voice implored softly in her left ear. Come speak with me, won't you? Just on the side of the house. I'm so nervous. I don't want to face anyone else yet. Martin's eyes flickered their direction as Mildred picked up her skirt, nodded to both him and Grant, who hadn't stopped talking about his new coat, and made her way to the side of the house. The sun sank closer to the spiny trees, casting long shadows on the grass. Once the sounds of the party were well behind them, Stella materialized next to Mildred. Oh, Stella, Mildred said, holding her at arm's distance. You look truly stunning. I want to practice that one. Sometimes voicing different people and then switching voices can be a little bit hard. So I went from the high-pitched Stella to kind of a sharper, lower Mildred. Oh, Stella, you look truly stunning. It's a little bit better. You look truly stunning. There we go. You look truly stunning. Stella beamed and took Mildred's hands. Sorry, one more time. So at the end of took, it sounds like tooked and tooked Mildred's hand. It's very subtle, but I've done this enough that I can feel it come off my tongue, so I change it. You look truly stunning. Stella beamed and took Mildred's hands. Do you like it? The gold stitching on Stella's layered ivory gown glimmered in the fading sunshine. Gently curling strands of blonde hair fell onto her shoulders, every piece looking as purposeful and perfect as if it had been set there individually. Your eyes have never been so blue, nor so happy. I'm very excited for you. Oh, Mildred, I'm a jumble of nerves, she said, laughing. We almost didn't get the dress finished in time. Wouldn't that have been the worst? What are you so nervous about? Mildred asked. It's only Dale, and your best friend's here. He already knows your faults. What if I say the wrong thing? She cried, but giggled when Mildred rolled her eyes. Or what if I trip and fall off the platform? Dale will catch you, Mildred quipped. He's still very young and spry. Were you and Martin able to move everything into our new apartment in downtown Chatham? Yes, Evelyn and I. Yes, Evelyn and I moved all your things. Martin and a few other guardians moved Dale's. I swept it and cleaned it up a bit to make sure it was tidy when you came home. Evelyn was going to get you some groceries, but she forgot. Stella smiled. Sounds just like her. Thank you, Millie. It won't be so hard getting married and moving away from the castle again, knowing I shall still see you whenever I want. And you can transport to my apartment anytime you need it. Of course, Stella. This is good change, not bad change. None of us has any reason to fear. I got one word wrong there. I don't always get that specific, but this one I do. Oh, shoot. I always lose my spot. There we go. Of course, Stella. This is good change, not bad change. None of us have any reason to fear. I knew you'd make me feel better. You always do. Oh, thank you for coming, Mildred. I couldn't have gone through it without you. Don't be daft, Mildred said, though she felt a pang of envy. Though she felt a pang of envy deep in her heart. Okay, I almost said deep envy. don't be daft, Mildred said, though she felt a pang of envy deep in her heart. You would have done fine without anyone else here. Oh my gosh, what is my problem? Here we go. You would have done fine without anyone else here. You could have run off to Newbury with the rest of the heathens and been handfasted by a cheap high witch that makes currency preying on amorous young couples like you and Dale. Stella clutched her sides in stitches. Oh, stop! You'll make me cry! Have you seen Dale? No. Stella shook her head, then her eyes widened. Have you? How does he look? Is he here on time? Were his parents here? I haven't seen him. A bell rang across the yard 3 times, stopping her response. Both girls paused, their ears turned to the front porch from whence the sound came. Who is this? Oh, it's a butler. Sorry, someone speaks, and I had no idea who it was. The hand-fasting ceremony will begin in 10 minutes, called the droll voice of the James's butler. The bride asks that you all be in your seat 5 minutes before the ceremony begins. Stella turned back to Mildred. I suppose that includes the bride? Only at some weddings, Mildred said with a wry smile. Take your time, Stell. They certainly won't start without you. Stella shimmered like the setting sun when she joined Dale on an elevated platform just outside the orchard. An arbor decorated with bouquets of cherry blossoms gave the bride and groom the appearance of floating through piles of clouds. Rays of sunlight twisted through the trees, and flowers and strands of gold... Oh, wait. That wasn't right. That pause is not right. Through piles of clouds. Rays of sunlight twisted through the trees and flowers in strands of gold and crimson. The officiating coven leader, a short, squat man with no neck and very large hands, called for the crowd to quiet. The hand-fasting ceremony will now begin, he said, looking up at Stella, who shone with dappled shadows and light. Are you Stella? He asked. I am. What is your desire? Stella smiled, tears of joy sparkling in her eyes. To be made one with Dale. Are you Dale? Dale's deep response rang over the crowd. I am. Okay, this is funny, but Dale says 2 words, but I'm still marking his voice because I know Dale's going to come into it later, and I don't want to have forgotten. What is your desire? He couldn't contain his jaunty grin. To be made one with Stella. The chubby coven leader smiled on both of them. Then let us begin the ceremony. At Stella's insistence, the coven leader kept the ceremony brief and sweet. By the time he'd finished his remarks, sniffles punctuated the congregation, and Agatha wept at her husband's side. Stella, Dale. The coven leader brought their hands together and clasped them firmly before him. You are now handfasted together for as long as the love between you shall last. Be happy. So mote it be. Okay. It's the same phrase repeated, but needs different voices. So mote it be, Mildred murmured with the rest of the congregation. Stella and Dale embraced in a lover's kiss underneath the blooming flowers, accompanied by a raucous, frenzied whoop from the crowd. Stella's words rang through Mildred's mind as she stood and applauded her friend who, at that moment, seemed far braver than she. I want to be a council member one day, but I don't want to do it at the expense of living, Mildred thought. I can never be high priestess, forbidden from marrying. Hold on. This is confusing. Oh, I see. Okay. So the problem actually here is I need to separate this paragraph from another one in the text because these are Stella's thoughts and it's not separated well. I want to be a council member one day, but I don't want to do it at the expense of living. I could never be high priestess. Forbidden from marrying? What about children? What about family? No, I shall live my life and have a career. Make it a beautiful life, Stella, Mildred whispered, smiling at her best friend. Live it for me. Boom. All right. Chapter 14, down. Now we're going to move right into chapter 15. I just have to mark it chapter by chapter. All right. Let's see who's here. We still have 5 people with us. Hi, Shell. Hi, Dean. Emily. Brenda. Garrett. You're awesome. Thanks for sharing it, Garrett. You're the best. You guys, Garrett's one of my favorite readers. He's here for everything. He's amazing. All right, here's chapter 15. Let's keep this party going. Here we go. Chapter 15. A Wonderful Secret. Sorry, there's like this awkward pause. I have to pause and I didn't look at the dialogue, but we got Evelyn coming up here. It was a lovely opera, Evelyn said with a sigh, stepping into the warm summer evening. I do love a dramatic ending. An acceptable 23rd birthday gift? Grant inquired with a droll lift of his eyebrows. Making Evelyn happy was a challenge few dared to tackle. Fortunately, Grant was just bored enough with his job to care. Yes, the past few months have been unbearably dull. Stella is always with her new husband, and Mildred lives in her own little world in the library. I think she has something going on there, but I can't figure out what it is. Far too many servants loiter around her. Grant rolled his eyes. Let's not talk about them. Let's get some food. I think I'd love a good drink of tea to close out my birthday celebrations, she said, pointing across the street. You can get some food there. Tea? Grant cried, flicking the ashes off the end of his cheroot and grinding them with his foot. Don't you mean Ipsum? It's too hot out for tea. It's summertime. Her nose wrinkled. It's my birthday, Grant. We're getting tea, and you'll like it. Hold on. I need ing. I said gettin', and it needs to be getting. Her nose wrinkled. It's my birthday, Grant. We're getting tea, and you'll like it. I told my friends I couldn't make our annual tea party because of this date, so I must have tea with you instead. Very well, Grant muttered. As you wish. He draped her skinny arm through his, and together they stepped away from the stage house and onto the... Stage house? I didn't know I had a stage house. Surprise. Control me. As you wish. He draped her skinny arm through his, and together they stepped away from the stage house and onto the well-kept streets of downtown... Sorry, you guys. Streeps. I said streeps. Grant muttered. As you wish. He draped her skinny arm through his, and together they stepped away from the stage house and onto the well-kept streets of downtown Ashley. Unlike Chatham City, Ashley was clean and manicured and smelled like cinnamon-roasted almonds instead of sewer rats. Patrolling guardians kept homeless vagrants away. Donovan considered Ashley the greatest city in the network and spared more guardians to protect the streets and maintain the law than he sent to patrol the central network's borders. Grant didn't really care, except Ashley had a more prestigious social scene and more tailors to suit his requirement for expert fashion. Evelyn managed to tug him across the street and into a quaint little tea house. Wallpaper sprigged with tiny flowers decorated the walls and backed the shelves of china. Grant lit the end of a hand-rolled cheroot, while Evelyn chose a pale pink tea set rimmed with gold, requested a raspberry leaf blend from the hostess, and settled in a cozy table near the front window. Really, Grant, a cheroot in here. She doesn't mind, he said, gesturing with the careless hand to the bumbling old woman that owned the shop. It's not a smelly mix, Evie. My gardeners gave me the finest, most expensive mix of herbs and tobacco. I'm council member over the best herb gardeners in all of Alcara. It's one of the perks. She rolled her eyes, then leaned forward. I say forward sometimes. It's one of the perks. She rolled her eyes, then leaned forward and took his hand across the table. I've got a wonderful secret I'd like to tell you, Grant. That's why I ditched my friends and wanted you to myself tonight. Are you sure it wasn't just for the free entertainment? He asked wryly, smoke trailing between his lips. I'm serious. May I trust you? He snuffed out the cheroot in his palm with a wicked smile. Seeing Evelyn pretend to be serious about anything except her social life was always amusing. You could trust me with anything, funny girl. Evelyn glanced out of the corner of her eye to make sure the squat old lady wasn't eavesdropping. I have a few ideas on how to pull the network out of the trouble we're headed for, and I need your help doing it. What do you say? Sure you do, he said, chuckling and reaching inside his pocket to find his watch. You've always wanted to save the world. She recoiled, tossing his hand away from her. His eyes jerked up to her in surprise. What's wrong? He asked, a bit of ash dribbling to the table from his cheroot. Evelyn leaned back in the chair and folded her arms across her chest. Mock me if you must. I'll not tell you a single secret ever again. You lost your chance and shall never regain it. Grant blinked several times, staring at his rejected hand. He couldn't imagine what had come over the fickle witch. I had no idea you meant it. I'm going to do one thing really quick. I need to redo this with Grant, but I want to listen to his initial voice. Okay, we're consistent. So I just like to double check that the original voice that my listeners hear compared to what I do later is consistent and steady. I had no idea you meant it so seriously, Evie. I understand now. Give me a second chance. No, she said, turning her face to the window. Grant took her hand, feeling a surge of hope when she didn't pull away. Aw, don't be like that, darling, please. She met his eyes briefly, hesitated, and softened. Do you mean it, Grant? Will you support me? His eyes narrowed with a moment of uncertainty. Is it dangerous? He asked. Very. His forehead furrowed into concerned lines. He simply didn't know how to respond. This was a new side to Evelyn that he hadn't anticipated, and he wasn't entirely certain he liked it. It was so fastidious. My goodness, I've never seen you this serious. Evelyn leaned into the table again. I'm dedicating my life to this idea, she whispered. I've been planning it for ages. Sorry, my phone just made a noise even though it's on silent, so I gotta redo it because it'll pick it up. I'm dedicating my life to this idea, she whispered. I've been planning it for ages now. May is my mentor and helps me with the big things, but trust the details to me. I need to start finding witches with the same ideals. She reached up to trail the tip of her finger down his face with a hopeful smile. Oh my gosh. Oh, hi, Nancy. How are you? Nancy said, amazing how you keep all the voices in your head. It must be crowded in there. Nancy, you're awesome. It's so fun to see you. Yeah, it is complicated keeping all of them in my head, which is why I have a library that I consult a lot. So cool to see you. Thanks for coming. Let's try it again. She reached up to trail the tip of her finger down his face with a hopeful smile. I thought of you oh my gosh, what is this noise? Oh, so fun. Thanks, Nola. Hi, Nola. How are you? Thank you so much for joining. You guys are so fun. All right. She reached up to trail the tip of her finger down his face with a hopeful smile. I thought of you first, of course. Grant couldn't help but feel skeptical because he didn't really have ideals. He'd often entertained Evelyn's impulsive ideas because she amused him and was an attractive enough distraction, but seeing the serious intent on her face set him back. He didn't like pleasure. I gotta listen to this one spot really quick. Yeah, it sounds okay. Sorry, I'm just listening to something. You guys, I love Grant, I have to say. He is funny. He doesn't have ideals. This is Grant. Oh, you're fine. You don't have to leave me alone. You're totally fine. I love hearing from you, Nola. The comments make it super fun, which is why live recording is so fun. You get to do it with me. He didn't like pleasure to get too mixed up with business. In fact, he really didn't like business at all, and this reeked of it. What exactly are you talking about doing? He asked wearily. Warily. I'm going to redo that one. It's warily, not wearily. What exactly are you talking about doing? He asked warily. Evelyn lifted a shrewd eyebrow. Do you swear to not speak of it to another living soul? He gave her a trying, half-hearted smile of amusement. Of course. She stuck out her arm. Then make a vow with me. A vow? He repeated, eyes widening. Evelyn, what is this about? I shan't tell you until I have complete confidence that you won't betray me. Grant studied her eyes, which had darkened into discs of the deepest emerald. There we go. All right. Here, Lisa. If I had an iPhone, it would quit making that noise. No, actually, I think it's like my phone was turned on silent, but the volume was still up, and I have TikTok notifications allowed. So I just turned the volume all the way down, and I think it's going to be fine. That noise is just your comments, and I love your comments. It's my favorite. We'll see if this works. Grant studied her eyes, which had darkened into discs of the deepest emerald. The owner of the shop bustled over and set down the teapot and 2 glasses. Evelyn didn't break eye contact, even while the woman placed a complimentary plate of scones between them and departed. Grant, that ending sounded funny, like the two Ds ran together. No, it's okay. Sometimes when I have a D and a D back together, they blur, but it sounded okay. The magic of the vow started at her palm and transferred to his. I vow to tell you my secret if you vow in your life to never betray all that I'm about to tell you. I accept. The magic thrummed, spiraling through his arm in a bead of light until it slipped into his chest and disappeared, like someone pulling a string through his heart. Grant, suddenly weary from all this seriousness, sank back in his seat. Well? He asked. Evelyn reached for the teapot and began to pour. I want to change the network. I want to prevent violence and unnecessary death. The poor are beginning to take over under Donovan's reign. She said Donovan funny there. I want to prevent violence and unnecessary death. The poor are beginning to take over under Donovan's reign, and I plan to see that they don't. I'm going to become the most powerful witch in the Central Network and clean up this mess. She slid a teacup across the table toward him with a bright smile. Even if I have to get rid of some witches to do it. His composure faltered. The good gods, he choked out. Evelyn, you could be speaking of treason. Which is why you aren't going to tell anyone, she hissed. Her face melted into rapturous joy. Oh, it's so exciting to think of having such power and making things work better, isn't it? Her eyes blazed with passion, so much so that Grant reared back to separate himself from her pocket of madness. If he began to care too much about anything, the way Evelyn did in fits and bursts, it would lead to more problems and less pleasure. This is quite serious, Evie. Yes, it is, which is why you and May and I are the only witches that know about it for now. Not even Stella or Mildred know yet. Our main goal must be to get me into power as soon as possible, for I can't change anything as an assistant. Change what? He thought. He wanted to know, but the light in her eyes was such that he dared not ask and wondered, with some fear, what he should do. This could be dangerous for me. Why should I support you in something that could lead to our deaths? A flash of anger rippled through her electric eyes, but settled after a moment. A fair question, she said. Do you want to improve the network? He shrugged. I don't really care. Her eyes narrowed. A little pop, pop, pop. I don't really care. Her eyes narrowed in pinched thought. Then what if I promised you more currency and power? More currency? He leaned forward. What exactly do you mean? Evelyn smiled. If you help me, I will give you power and wealth you've never dreamed of having. Help me reform the Central Network into... Sorry, the Central Network stuttered a little bit. She goes, help me to reform the Central Network. Evelyn smiled. If you help me, I will give you power and wealth you've never dreamed of having. Help me reform the Central Network into a safer place, and we shall be powerful together. No more oppression from the poor, no more riots in the night. He sucked in a sharp breath. Well, if currency were involved, that would be a different situation altogether. It's a steep proposition. Sounds like a lot of work, really. You know how I feel about working too much. It will be a lot of work. The network is a mess, but I'll do most of it. I'll just include you when I need you every now and then, that's all. And the reward will be the same. The very same. Grant forced himself back into his usual expression of indolent disregard, lest Evelyn see his building excitement. Little work, but more power and wealth? A perfect proposition. Besides, Evie had a wild look in her eye, and he didn't trust... Oh, not and. I added an and. You guys, I add so many words into my books. It's ridiculous. Perfect proposition. Besides, Evie had a wild look in her eye he didn't trust and certainly wouldn't fight. Truth be told, if any witch could pull off such a wild plan, she could. The idea of power had a certain appeal. With enough currency, he could pay a servant to remove the cheroot from his mouth if he wanted. He sighed. Becoming a council member had made his life decidedly more complicated, but not always in the worst ways. All right, Evie, I shall support you, but don't rely on me too much, will you? Of course not. It's a long way off, of course. As May says, we must be patient if we want to bring about change. Grant thought of what he could do with more currency, then shrugged the whole uncomfortable mess off to think about later. Now, Evie, let's talk about your plans for the rest of the night. I'm ravenous, and I don't mean for scones. You guys, Grant is so much fun to voice. He's such a tard. I love it. I love people like him that are just unequivocally who they are. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. It's so fun to have your comments. Okay, we're going right into, let's see, chapter 16, which is titled Interruptions. Just got to type it in. And we're off to the races. These chapters are pretty short and sweet, so I'm hoping to get through 2 more at least. Chapter 16, Interruptions. I want all of you to make your own cards with each letter of the alphabet drawn on one side. Quiz yourselves in the preparation for the test next week. Are there any questions? Mildred's hawk-like eyes scanned the classroom, catching a movement in the corner near the door. Councilmember Porter slipped into the room, eyebrows pulled low. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't exactly asked permission to hold classes for the servants. Her evening reading class was so full it nearly burst out the window of her old classroom in the servants' quarters. It was a surly summer evening. So many witches had come that half of them had to stand in the sticky heat. Don't forget to bring a quill if you have one, she continued, as if she hadn't noticed Porter lurking in the back. I'll provide as many as I can, but if we're this full, I can't guarantee you'll have your own. Thank you for coming. You're dismissed. The class hesitated. Well? She cried. What are you waiting for? Leave. I have another class in 20 minutes. Porter pressed. Okay, wait. While we're stopped, I need, I've already voiced Porter, so I'm going to go back and listen to him. It's going to save us a stop. Where's Porter? There we go. I have an early appointment with the High Priestess. He's very much like old age British, like, a high appointment with the High Priestess. Your Highness. So his next one is going to be, of course not, Lavinia. Miss Mildred is not in trouble. Okay. So I just have to have his voice in my mind before I go into it. Helps me keep it really smooth. Porter pressed himself against the wall as witches filed by, greeting them by name. Mildred watched the servants carefully, noticing their easy smiles and warm affection toward the council member. The fact that a busy council member, a member of the upper class, would know the individual names of the workers eased her fears. She hadn't even told her friends about her push for servant education. Knowing Evelyn's views on the poor, and uncertain that Stella could keep a secret from Evelyn's shrewd mind, Mildred had simply said nothing. We aren't doing anything wrong, Lavinia squeaked when she passed Porter, her hair pasted to the sides of her neck from the damp heat. We aren't breaking any rules, council member. Please don't get mad at Miss Mildred. He smiled to reassure her. Of course not, Lavinia. Miss Mildred is not in trouble. Though she wouldn't admit to uneasy discomfort in the first place, Mildred breathed a bit better after his promise. The eraser cleaned off the chalkboard in the meantime. Chairs and long tables slid back in order of their own accord. Textbooks flew over to her desk from the tables and stacked themselves in a neat pile. Mildred orchestrated the cleanup without much thought. Teaching had increased her own magical powers, as if sharing knowledge expanded her abilities. Being around so many witches didn't exhaust her the way it used to, either. Standing behind the desk put her in a different frame of mind, like a barrier preventing her hatred of social events from taking over. In fact, she looked forward to seeing her pupils. Do you mind if I talk with you a minute? Porter asked once the last student had gone. He wore a freshly pressed white shirt that brought attention to the white hues of his gray hair. I have a few minutes to spare. With the absence of bodies, the temperature of the room fell several degrees. Mildred motioned for him to take a seat, but he opted to lean against a table instead. She didn't know him well, but doubted he would have been so genial if he'd come to shut the operation down. The operation faltered? Yeah, it sounds like the operation. It's very subtle, but I don't like it. It takes the reader out. She didn't know him well, but doubted he would have been so genial if he'd come to shut the operation down. Is something wrong, council member? No, nothing's wrong. I've been hearing rumors that education for the servants had started back up again, and wanted to find out who was running it. It sounds off to me. I want to re-listen. I have an early appointment with the High Priestess. I'm just listening right now. I am so grateful that you agreed to come to this meeting. All right. So I want to go back a little. I just want to redo it. I get his voice back in my mind, and then I start again. No, nothing's wrong. I've been hearing rumors that education for the servants had started back up again and wanted to find out who was running it. How long has this been going on? Since I started as a librarian, really. I almost said a librarian, but it's just as librarian. How long has this been going on? Since I started as librarian, really. It was smaller then, but has grown. Over a year now? Yes, I run classes every evening and during the day. His eyes widened. Really? Yes. On top of your work in the library? Yes. How many classes? At least 6 per day. I had no idea you were educating so many. What subjects? Many, she said. Most of them need the basics since they can't read or write. Mrs. F asked me to teach some of the younger cooks incantations that will help them in the kitchens because she doesn't have the time to critique all of them. And you know all the kitchen spells? He asked in surprise. I do now. Mrs. F taught them to me one night, and I'm teaching the rest of the kitchen staff at a slower pace. It's helping efficiency, although many of them are still learning. Impressive, he murmured, glancing around. Do you have any objections? She asked when the silence became unbearable. No, he said. Quite the opposite, in fact. I can't offer to pay you more because of what you're doing. I'm not doing it for the currency. Porter smiled. I never thought you were. Since I can't give you currency, please accept my appreciation. It's not every librarian that would set up something so expansive. I hated firing the teacher that taught the servants and their children. Resources have been very tight. His eyes grew distant. They'll never really succeed in life without an education, and I would never willingly doom them to servitude for the rest of their lives. Do you mind if I ask, that is, why are you doing it? Education doesn't belong to one witch. He seemed to digest that for a moment, then smiled. Well, Mildred, carry on. He paused halfway to the door before spinning back around on his heel. Let me know if you have any problems, will you? If anyone approaches you about it, send them to me. I'll take care of it. The queer look in his eyes unsettled her, but he left the room before she could ask what he meant. Problems? She thought. Who would approach me? Mildred stared at the door, then sat in the chair with a sigh. What a strange experience working as a librarian had become. She remained only a moment longer before gaining her feet and preparing for her next class, beginning potions. I feel like the cadence in that final sentence of this scene was a little weird, so I'm going to listen to it again. Preparing for her next class. Okay, it's fine. I think it maybe sounded a little weird because the way I said for her next class, but we're good. I have a new idea, Lavinia. That was a weird start. My breath came out weird and made that weird start. I have a new idea, Lavinia, Mildred said one morning during the second month of fall, setting an old grimoire on the rough-hewn tabletop between them. Look what I found. Lavinia, who sat studiously straight and proper the way Mildred insisted, glanced up from a book of poetry. Her eyes skimmed over the page Mildred showed her, but she didn't seem to comprehend the tight writing in ancient words. What is it, Miss Mildred? That, Mildred said, pointing to a collection of words in the middle of the page, is a spell I think we can use to communicate with most of the students. They won't have to worry about writing letters or sneaking to the library during work to ask me a question. Lavinia's eyes widened. Really? Yes, really. You and I will be the first to try it. What do you think? Of course. Mildred placed her hand, palm down, on the table by Lavinia and studied the book for several quiet moments. I think I've got it, she said. Now pay attention and watch my middle finger. I'm not sure this will work on my first attempt, but let's try. Mildred whispered the spell under her breath. A warm tingle started at the bottom of her palm, then radiated through her nerves and into the tips of her fingers. Within a flash, her hand felt hot. 1,000 prickles developed under her skin in a swirl. As quickly as it came, the sensation disappeared, leaving a faint light around her middle finger between the second and third knuckle in the shape of a ring. Specks of light appeared above it, one at a time, until Lavinia had to glance away from the brightness. Once it faded, 2 light gray tattoos remained behind. A whirling ring around her fingers sat below the head of a lioness, and between the 2 knuckles closest to her palm. What is it? Lavinia asked, breathless. Mildred opened and closed her hand in a fist. The tingling lingered like the discomfort of plunging a cold hand into very warm water. It's called a Selenda, Mildred said, staring at it with a furrowed brow. She certainly hadn't intended to put a lioness on her hand. It's a communication spell. What is the lioness? My personal symbol, I suppose, she said, lifting her hand to inspect it. The grimoire said that every witch's symbol would be different, based on their personality and magic. I suppose I'm a lioness. Now give me your hand. Lavinia hesitated. Does it hurt? Feels like a very warm bee sting. Lavinia rolled her eyes and dropped her hand in Mildred's. Father used to take the belt. Father was weird. Sometimes words come out of my mouth in really weird ways. Father used to take the belt to my back when I got in trouble stealing, so bee sting's nothing. Mildred skimmed the grimoire again, finding a different spell for extending the Selenda to another witch. She pressed their palms together and entwined their fingers. I have to bind you to the magic of my Selenda, she said, translating the directions. Whenever you use this spell to communicate, it will draw from my power. Lavinia recoiled in horror. I can't take from your magic, Miss Mildred. What if I drain it all? I doubt you could if you tried, Mildred said with a droll smile. It doesn't sound like it requires much magic. I won't even notice it, I think. The grimoire says, if I'm reading it correctly, that it can be used with hundreds of witches, depending on the power of the witch giving it. Lavinia didn't say a word throughout the process. She just stared with intense concentration at the light swirling on her middle finger. When it finished, she pulled away and inspected her hand. My symbol is a quill? Her face scrunched in confusion. Why do you think it's a quill? Perhaps it's something you have to learn about yourself. Sorry, I hesitated too long and then I hesitated too long. Oh, real quick. Oh, bye, Nola. Oh, thank you. Nola says she's off to do her writing. Oh, you're the best, Nola. I appreciate you too. Look her up on YouTube and you'll be thoroughly impressed. You're wonderful, Nola. So wonderful. Thanks for coming in. It was so fun to see all of you. Anna, Garrett, Callie, Elizabeth. Wow, thank you all. So fun to have you all hanging out here. Okay. Bye, Nola. Adore you. We'll see you later. Lavinia drifted into thought until Mildred brought her back to the present. Now I'll teach you how it works on a basic level, although it can be quite complicated if you want more organization, she said. Don't worry about the deeper levels. That's something I'll figure out later when we have more students involved. This magic is really quite simple, which is why I chose it. You repeat the incantation and state whatever message you want to send. The shorter, the better. The Selenda will transfer the message to my hand. Let me show you. Mildred used silent magic for the incantation and sent a message. The quill on Lavinia's hand rearranged itself into the shape of Mildred's growling. I thought it said growing. That didn't make any sense. And sent a message. The quill on Lavinia's hand rearranged itself into the shape of Mildred's growling. Oh my gosh, I just did it again. I do it all the time. Should be growling. Hi, Liz. The quill on Lavinia's hand rearranged itself into the shape of Mildred's growling lioness, and the words, "Don't forget your homework," appeared where the ring had once been. They faded after 10 seconds. Actually, no. So the words that just showed up are from Mildred, so I want to voice them in Mildred's voice, and I didn't, so I want to redo that. The quill on Lavinia's hand rearranged itself into the shape of Mildred's growling lioness, and the words, "Don't forget your homework," appeared where the ring had once been. They faded after 10 seconds, leaving the ring and Lavinia's quill behind. Lavinia cracked a wide grin. "It worked," she breathed. "Oh, Miss Mildred, this is simply wonderful. It will be so easy now." Lavinia practiced the incantation and a careful pronunciation of her words until she was correct every time. "Thank you, Miss Mildred." Ah! Sorry, I have an itchy nose. It's the worst. Narrating with an itchy nose is the worst. Okay. "I'll need to extend the Selenda to the rest of the students," Mildred said, already mapping out a plan. "We'll do it during class, I suppose. That will be easiest. For those who can't read, I'll send a message through the Selenda an hour before class starts as a reminder. They can at least recognize my picture. Or I'll send the homework assignment. There are many possibilities, and this will prevent the flood of letters and the streams of students leaving work to ask questions." "Of course, Miss Mildred," Lavinia said, beaming. "I'm honored that you would trust me to be the first to receive it." The shuffle of approaching feet recalled Mildred to her feet and her job. No doubt there were annoyed library patrons trying to find her. "Thank you, Lavinia," she said. "I shall see you later this weekend." Mildred slipped between the bookshelves, disappearing into the bowels of the library without another word. Boom, bam, baby. One more chapter down. These chapters are so... can't even talk. So short and sweet. I absolutely love them. We're going on to chapter 17 right now. I'm just putting the title in my DAW, and I'm excited. I think we'll try and do, my itchy nose, through 18 today. But Liz popped on. Hi, Liz. Thanks so much. You're so fun. It's so cool to see you. Thanks, Nancy. I'm glad you think it's cool. It's a pretty interesting process, isn't it? To see my facial expressions and then my voice change as I talk. It's really, when I watch it back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so dramatic. So dramatic. All right, here is chapter 17. It's titled, I'll Protect You. Chapter 17, I'll Protect You. Evelyn shut the door to Nell's stuffy office with a sigh of relief. The chilly air of the hall revived her from her sleepy state. Sitting in a chair reviewing paperwork all day made her grouchy, tired, and hungry. She longed for the refreshing distraction of people and conversation. I hope Donovan's little dinner gathering isn't over, she muttered, pinning her wild red hair into a loose bun at her neck, or I'll be very upset. The halls were unusually quiet. Then again, she had been working very late for Nell on a special project. A recent snowstorm left delicate swirls of frost on the window panes when she walked past, her burgundy dress rustling as she shivered in the cold halls. An unfamiliar sound stopped her. She stood in the middle of the corridor until the noise came again from just around the corner to her left. A muted cry followed. No! Please, no! Evelyn slipped around the corner and halted. Donovan lay on the ground like a beached whale. A feminine pair of lace slippers stuck out from beneath his massive legs, where a hint of a dress lay on the floor. All right, so we're going to be doing Donovan. This Donovan is abhorrent. He's the high priest of this network, and he's terrible, for those of you that know him. But I have voiced him, so I got to find his voice again because I don't remember him. Sure. I'm listening right now. You can't hear it, but I'm listening. Where is he? There. To the new assistant to the high priestess, is what he's saying here. To the high priestess. To the assistant to the high priestess. So the next one, he's going to say, oh, a jolly one. Oh, he's terrible. He's so awful. I hate everything about Donovan. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, a jolly one, Donovan said, his sausage-like fingers clamped over the mouth and nose of a young girl Evelyn had seen before. Tears streaked the poor girl's face as she thrashed back and forth, trying to scream. Perspiration wetted Donovan's hair while he struggled to subdue her with one hand and keep her silenced with the other. I like them feisty. Well, well, Evelyn murmured with a smile. Merry meet, Donovan, she called, striding toward them. Just what do you think you're doing? He tried to twist his head around, but she cast a paralyzing incantation. His moist face dropped. Moist face. You guys, I do this all the time. I add a D to face. I say faced. I didn't, but now I have to redo it anyway. I always have to watch face. His moist face dropped, nearly smacking the girl on the nose. The rest of his body went limp. Help! The young woman screamed, shaking Donovan's hand off her face and pulling in a deep breath. Please help! There, Evelyn said, kneeling next to the girl and shoving Donovan's arm off her neck. Be still, I'm here to help. The girl panted, pinned beneath Donovan's vast girth. Tears and snot streaked across her face. Evelyn used another incantation to roll Donovan off her, and the girl scrambled to freedom with a sob. Hush, Evelyn crooned. Everything will be all right. The girl had made. Everything will be all right. The girl had round cheeks and pale blonde eyelashes that met. Wait. Sometimes I also forget the D. I said round. I said round cheeks, not round cheeks. I have to redo that. The girl had round cheeks and pale blonde eyelashes that matched her mussed hair. She couldn't have been older than 14. The sleeve of an elegant evening gown dangled from her left shoulder. Evelyn whispered a calming blessing. The girl's shuddering gasps slowed into ragged, deep pants. What's your name? Evelyn asked. Anita, the girl whispered, wiping her face with the back of her arm. My name's Anita. I'm Evelyn. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. Yes, they do, don't they? You seem familiar. My uncle works here. Who is your uncle? Noah, the head of protectors, she said in a tremulous voice. Her bottom lip quivered. I'm here visiting, just for a day or two. My parents are on vacation. Please take me to him. I'm scared. Evelyn leaned back in surprise. Donovan had just attempted to rape the beloved niece of his head of protectors. Talented, dangerous Noah would kill Donovan before he could wake from his drunken stupor. You make your own luck. Nope. This is May. This is a memory, so I just voiced it as Evelyn, but it's actually May. You make your own luck. There we go. You make your own luck, sang May's voice in the back of her mind. Just keep your eyes open, and you'll find chances to be great. Evelyn's heart hammered. My gosh, you guys. Some days. Evelyn's heart hammered with a sudden rush of energy and giddiness. She'd just stumbled on the opportunity of a lifetime. With careful management, she could make things happen that even May would be proud of. The very idea made her buzz with renewed life. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder at Donovan's prostrate body. The unshaven hairs of his pudgy chin held onto several crumbs from dinner. Wine stained the front of his shirt, blending with the sharp tang of Ipsum. He stared blankly at the ceiling, unable to move on his own, although he could still hear and see. She would have to play this very carefully. I'm sorry this happened, Anita, she said. I'm so glad I stumbled down this way to save you. I'm going to move Donovan to his office. Can you walk with me? Anita snuck a glance at Donovan before nodding. Taking it as a good sign, Evelyn helped her stand. She trembled like an aspen leaf in the wind. Once straightened, her knees gave out. Evelyn caught her before she fell. Put your arm around me, Evelyn instructed. We'll go together. Anita hesitated, her dilated eyes darting everywhere at once. Donovan can't hurt you. Donovan. I think I added a D. Donovan. Darting everywhere at once. Donovan can't hurt you now. I'll make sure he never touches you again. Understand? As soon as we get him in his office, I'll take you right to your uncle. That's a good girl. Evelyn cast another incantation on Donovan and started toward the high priest's office down the hall to the left. His flaccid body trailed behind them. Just in here, Evelyn said, turning. Have a seat. Anita fell into a chair near the fire, her entire body shuddering. She folded her arms across her middle, her face pale and eyes wide, and stared at the floor. Now for you, Evelyn muttered, facing Donovan with a raised eyebrow. She lifted him with a magical spell onto an extra-wide couch made for his expansive body. Once he lay there, she released the paralyzing incantation. Instead of leaping off the couch in a fury, as most witches would have done, Donovan didn't so much as twitch. Except for the grating sound of his deep snore, he didn't change at all. She pulled the key from his front pocket and tucked it into her own. I'll take that, thank you. Evelyn carefully approached Anita, who was now in a deep daze. Anita, let's find your uncle, she whispered, brushing her shoulder with a gentle hand. Anita leapt off the chair, but relaxed when she saw Evelyn. Evelyn wrapped an arm around Anita's shaking shoulders again. That's a good girl, Evelyn murmured, guiding her into the hallway and locking the door behind them. Pick up your feet. There we go. You're going to be just fine. Noah had the shoulders of an ox and the sleuthing ability. I almost said capability, but it's ability. Just gotta redo it. Hey, everybody. Noah had the shoulders of an ox and the sleuthing ability of a panther. He'd started as one of the youngest heads of protectors in network history. Instead of protecting the central network in an organized mass like the Guardians, the protectors were a quiet brotherhood of 13 exceptionally skilled male witches who spied. That cadence is just wrong. I want to redo that sentence. Sometimes I get into a sentence and figure out the cadence as I go. Oh my gosh, then I lose my spot because I'm talking to you. The protectors were a quiet brotherhood of 13 exceptionally skilled male witches who spied, crossed enemy lines, and performed any sneaky, dangerous magical work the highest witch or head of guardians needed done. Noah had excelled his guardian superiors in magical skill from the day he began as a young guardian, thanks to years of experience living on the street. He seemed to have an eye for all things underhanded, which meant he breezed through the guardian requirements so quickly he caught the eye of the head of the protectors. I gotta make sure that I didn't stumble over that final head of protectors. Yeah, I did. It's really subtle, but there's like a very slight lisp that when you're listening it takes you out of it, and I don't want that. Underhanded, which meant he breezed through the guardian requirements so quickly he caught the eye of the head of protectors. With time, Noah made it through the wearisome selection process for protectors and became, at 18 years old, the youngest to join. Now, at 30, he worked as head of protectors with unusual daring. His success stroked his prodigious ego. Because of his roots in by thievery. First I thought it said theory. His prodigious ego. Because of his roots in survival by thievery, he wasn't a perfectly moral witch by any account, something Donovan overlooked because of his undeniable skill. Noah stood at his chamber window in tense, coiled anger. His jaw felt so tight it threatened to snap and spill teeth all over the floor. Evelyn stood several paces away in the quiet darkness of his personal quarters, illuminated only by the moonlight spilling in a long beam across her shoulders. Noah hadn't spoken after she'd shown up at his door with a sobbing Anita on her arm and a whispered explanation. Anita slept soundly on Noah's couch, thanks to a powerful blessing from Evelyn. Noah refused to take his eyes off her. "I can't imagine what you must be feeling," Evelyn said. "But whatever it is, you can't let anger overtake you. I believe there's a chance we can make something good come of this." Noah's nostrils flared, but he said nothing. Something good come of senseless violence to his innocent niece? As head of protectors, tradition dictated he was not allowed to marry or have children. Anita was the closest thing he'd ever have to a daughter. His fists clenched. Only a lifetime of schooling kept him from pounding Donovan's door down, and I'm sure giving Donovan his just due is at the forefront. Kept him from pounding Donovan's door down, and I'm sure giving Donovan his just due is at the forefront of your mind right now, Evelyn said, jerking him from his reveries of revenge. "It must be, because it's all I can think about on Anita's behalf, but I must implore you not to take any action against the high priest and jeopardize your own life." "And why not?" All right, so I don't think I voice Noah again after this scene, but I'm going to mark his voice anyway, just so he's in my library in case I need him. That's why I stopped. "If you really want to get back at Donovan, I can help you." Her voice acquired an edge that piqued his attention. "Using methods far more comprehensive. Besides, you can't kill the high priest without retribution crushing you and your family." "I have my brotherhood," he snapped. I need to snap it more. "Kill the high priest without..." "I have my brotherhood," he snapped. "They will help. The blame will not fall on me." "They are loyal to the network." "They are loyal to me." He thumped his chest with a fist. "No one is loyal to Donovan." He looked like a madman, but Evelyn met his wild, red-hot stare without fear. His grudging surprise earned her one more minute of his time. Kind of slurred. Yeah, the S on his kind of slurred and it sounded funny. Red-hot stare without fear. His grudging surprise earned her one more minute of his time. If she didn't startle as easily as the rest, perhaps she had something to say. "Trust me when I say you aren't alone," she said. "But let's look at this from a political standpoint, taking the view of the world Donovan lives in. Destroy Donovan's career. It's what he lives for, after all, isn't it? There are those of us that are less than sympathetic to Donovan and his tempestuous reign as high priest. We can and will help you destroy him." He stared her down with narrowed eyes. Letting Donovan get away with his despicable actions was completely unacceptable. Then again, she had a point. He couldn't kill the high priest without harm falling on his family, and by extension, the niece he would die to protect. But if Evelyn had an alternative... "We?" he asked. Evelyn smiled. "Yes," she said. "I don't stand alone, though I won't tell you any of the others just yet. You'll have to earn my trust." "Who says I trust you?" "You don't trust me yet, which is fine. But you will eventually, because you know I'm your best bet at revenge." A pregnant pause filled the night air, broken only by the wispy breaths of Anita in her deep but troubled sleep. Noah could appreciate the power of confidence as well as anyone, but Evelyn appeared more than confident. If anything, she was certain. While it annoyed him, he couldn't help admit curiosity. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll wait, but this better be worth it." Evelyn grinned, and her teeth gleamed a bright white in the moonlight. "I'll be in touch." Evelyn strolled into Donovan's office the next morning with a fresh face and a bright smile. At least, that's what he assumed, since he couldn't see much through his hazy double vision. Nor did he want to really see her. If he had to face anyone, he didn't want it to be Evelyn. "Good morning, Donovan," she said, a chirp in her voice, throwing his heavy drapes wide open. Bright winter sunshine streamed into his opulent office, spilling light onto walls of cream and gold. An elk head hung over the fireplace, wide-eyed and still. He closed his eyes to block it all out. Too much light. "Go away," he moaned. He'd fallen on his face sometime in the night and hadn't the energy to move. How long had he been in his office? The last thing he remembered was Rand pouring him another drink of dark Ipsum, then stumbling to relieve himself. "You're a wallowing disaster, Donovan," Evelyn said, nudging his leg with a pointed shoe. "And you smell like urine. Get off the floor. We need to have a chat about last night before your assistant pops in." His forehead moved into 3 fat rolls as he tried to concentrate on what she meant, but everything moved in circles, so he stopped. His stomach roiled. He needed a drink to wake him up. "Leave me or get me a drink." I'm going to check Donovan again. Yeah, we're good. Sometimes when I voiced a lot of different people, they jumble in my head, so I just have to check a lot. Evelyn stopped a hand's breadth from his face. He stared at her glaring red shoes in an unsuccessful attempt to bring them into focus. She held a glass of amber liquid in her right hand, just out of reach. "Is this what you want?" she asked. Motivated by the thought of getting the tart juice in his body, Donovan pushed off the floor, regretting it when he pitched forward again, landing back on the chilly stone floor with a slap. His head pounded. His vision grew blurry and then black. Evelyn's giggle penetrated the depths of his mental fog. "You shouldn't drink so much, you know," she said, setting the glass on a table and sitting down, draping one long leg over the other. "Then you do naughty, naughty things." Vague memories flipped through Donovan's bloated mind. Ripping fabric, the ceiling moving, Evelyn's voice. "What are you talking about?" he muttered, rubbing his face. "You don't remember?" she asked. Even hungover, he could still hear the notes of sarcasm in her tone. "Strange. I'd think attacking and attempting to rape Noah's niece in the middle of the night would be noteworthy, even if you were stone drunk." The words took a moment to register. Attempting to rape Noah's niece. It took even longer for him to remember who Noah was, and when he did, all the blood left his face in a chilly rush of fear. "What?" he whispered in panic. Evelyn leaned forward with a smile. "You tried to rape a young girl last night, High Priest. Not just any girl, either. Sweet little Anita, the witch your head of protectors loves and treasures above all others. Are you frightened yet? Because he's ready to kill you." Donovan stared at her for several minutes. Was it possible? Had he finally pushed his drinking too far? He knew this day would come, but never dreamed he'd do something so stupid. Evelyn lounged back again, rolling her ankle in circles and drawing attention to her long, pale legs. "He can't kill me," Donovan whispered. "Oh?" Evelyn asked archly. "Are you sure about that?" In his current state of half panic, half drunkenness, he wasn't sure at all. Surely there was some kind of protection in the law, something... No, was there? He put a shaky hand to his aching head. Just one drink would clear this mental snowfall, give him the power to comprehend. "Fortunately, I happened by and paralyzed you." Evelyn. I said Evelyn. "Fortunately, I happened by and paralyzed you," Evelyn said. "You didn't complete the nasty deed. You didn't even make it that far, really." Bits and pieces of Donovan's memory began to reassemble in a delirious mess. He blinked his hot eyes and realized that Evelyn was still talking. "If it had been anyone but me, Councilmember Porter, perhaps, he might have called the Guardians. Porter is a pompous ass, but he's intelligent. He would have sent a letter to the Chatterer to spread the word, or maybe he'd just let Noah deal with you. Either way, Porter is just waiting for you to mess up big time so he can institute the old rules and vote you out. What council member would remain on your side after you tried to rape a teenager?" "Blessed be," Donovan said. She was right. Evelyn Ringer had saved his career, if not his life, by intervening. The thought of being in her debt made him gag. If he had anything in his stomach, it would have come out. Evelyn lounged back in the chair. "Don't fear. I'm here as your guardian of mercy to get you out of this stink. I convinced Noah to spare your life for one night, but it's going to cost you a lot more than that." Okay. Hi. Where did that go? I want to see. Oh, hey everybody. We're almost done with this chapter. This is I just deleted. Nope. keep deleting it. Okay, there we go. But it's going to cost you a lot more than that if you want me, how do I say that? If you want me to allay him for good. For one night. But it's going to cost you a lot more than that if you want me to allay him for good. Donovan, taking every motion a breath at a time, sat up and pressed his back against the couch. His entire body ached, even the teeth in his cottony mouth. The glass of amber liquid sat just out of reach, beckoning him. His body needed it to get going. He was in far over his head and hardly able to think. Just one drink. "Give me that Ipsum," he growled. "Not until I've had my say," she said in a light little trill. Donovan meant to moan, but it came out as more of a whimper. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll do whatever you say. Now give me the Ipsum." "Whatever I say?" "Yes." Evelyn smiled and slid the tumbler across the table with a spell. Donovan grabbed it with both hands and drank as if it would be his last. "That's what I thought," she said. "Now I think it's time I became council member, don't you? You owe me at least that much for saving your life and career." Evelyn sat across from May's desk 3 days later, clenching a scroll in one hand and striving for a cool facade. Surely she'll approve, Evelyn thought. You guys. My itchy nose. I gotta test that. Yeah, there's a little slur on Shirley. And striving for a cool facade. She'll surely approve, Evelyn thought with a thrill of joy she could hardly suppress. May's demands were not subtle, and they were not easy, which made it impossible to do things just right. Evelyn could understand why. Taking over the network and staging what would be an eventual overthrow was not for the weak of heart. All the same, she did wish that May wasn't so reticent with her praise. But not anymore, she thought. Evelyn had effectively not anymore. Evelyn had effectively pulled off one of the greatest tricks in political history. Donovan wasn't the first high priest to be blackmailed, but he would be the last. When she was in power, she simply wouldn't stand for it. The Esmeralda Scrolls prevented a high priest or high priestess from taking the life of a council member as punishment, unless certain criteria. I'm going to go back a little bit, actually. Start that with a fresh breath. The Esmeralda Scrolls prevented a high priest or high priestess from taking the life of a council member as punishment, unless certain criteria were met, which seems silly nowadays. Esmeralda had written a good law for that time, but magic in the world of Alcar had evolved in the thousands of years that had passed. It was time for a newer, more appropriate law. I shall be in control one day and make the world a better place, Evelyn thought, reassuring herself yet again. Some days it felt like she was falling, slipping into something terribly frightening and dark. It stole her breath when she thought about it, paralyzing her in fear in the few moments when it gripped her. But it always passed, and she let it go without much thought. Surely some anxiety was natural in the pursuit of such a cause. May entered the room by sound first. Evelyn heard the swish of her dress over the floorboards, the gentle clutter of May's desk, the tick of the clock, the vague scent of something musky all made Evelyn feel as if she were a young teenager again. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Please like what I've done," she begged silently, exhaling one final calming breath. "Please don't give me that sour, disapproving face again." "What are you doing here so unexpectedly, Evelyn?" May asked. The door clicked shut behind her. She walked into Evelyn's field of vision and stood just behind her desk. The sharp tone of voice and firm stare didn't even concern Evelyn, not today. "I had something very important to discuss with you," she said with an impressive calm that made her feel more in control. May studied her with her usual frank expression, and must have seen the confidence flickering in Evelyn's eyes, for she sat down. "Explain." Evelyn sent May the scroll in her hand with an incantation. It unfurled itself a comfortable distance from her face, hovering in the air so that both could see the words. Evelyn refrained from shouting an explanation before May finished. Emotional stability was key, but oh, how hard it was. All she wanted to do was sing from the rooftops. "I've done it! I've finally secured my future, and shan't have to wait much longer." When May finished reading the document, she looked at Evelyn. A bright sparkle lingered in her eyes. Evelyn held her breath. Dare she hope for approval? Was May actually proud of her? Proud the way a mother would be? Just the thought sent Evelyn's throat into a thick mess. She swallowed past it and kept calm by sheer force. "Suffice it to say," Evelyn heard herself say in a cool, measured tone. Let us stumbled onto Donovan in a troubling situation. Thanks to fast thinking and a little blackmail while he was hungover, I am now in possession of a binding. Should be binding. I don't know why I said blinding. Fast thinking and a little blackmail while he was hungover, I am now in possession of a binding signed by the high priest that guarantees my assent to power as council member. Okay, this is quite the sentence. When he was hungover, I am now in possession of a binding signed by the high priest that guarantees my assent to power as council member within the next 2 weeks. Not only that, but he's agreed to never remove me as council member or speak of this to anyone. My job is secured. May's eyes shone with a fantastic light that Evelyn recognized. May paused, staring at her with her head tilted. I was like, that's not grammatically correct. We got it. May paused, staring at her. Oh my gosh, why can I not get this sentence? This happens. Sometimes there is just a sentence that I just can't get. Evelyn recognized. May paused, staring at her with her head tilted at an odd angle. Her eyes narrowed in delight, as if she were savoring a very rich treat. I'm quite impressed, Evelyn. You have Her eyes narrowed in delight, as if she were savoring a very rich treat. I'm quite impressed, Evelyn. You have finally done well, my girl. Evelyn's heart soared. She collected the words and wrapped them in a special place in her heart. She'd never forget this day, never. May was pleased. Evelyn would be council member by the end of the month, and she felt as if nothing would ever stop her again. Thank you, she said, suppressing the need to weep. She found herself wishing some nights that it wasn't so necessary to distance herself from Nell. She longed for more maternal affection, but now May was giving it to her, and Evelyn would never need anything else. Do you know when he will appoint you? May asked, her eyes flickering to a calendar on the wall. He insisted on time to figure out which council member he would remove, but I'm hoping it's Pamela so I can take over the Ashley Covens. In fact, I strongly suggested that course of action to him. That would remove another competitive figure for High Priestess later, May said, her hands steepled in front of her face. Yes, Evelyn said. Yes, I suppose you're right. I hadn't thought of that. May smiled and stood up from behind her desk. That's why I'm here, to think of what you do not. Now, let me instruct you on a few key points. She began to pace across the width of the room. Evelyn watched in fascination as May's lips moved wordlessly in a silent, subtle conversation. She'd scrunch her face, bite her lip, then shake her head and turn around again. Evelyn had just started to get nervous when May stopped and turned to face her. You becoming council member at 23 will stir up a lot of gossip. We can't avoid it, so we must deal with it the best we can. Our first plan after you take power will... That W got me. Oh, thanks, Rocco. Thanks for coming in. Cool to see you, buddy. Awesome, thanks. I don't know what I just did. Sorry, sometimes there we go. My audio workstation gets a little finicky. Okay, got to save it. We can't avoid it, so we must deal with it the best we can. Our first plan after you take power will be to lay low. Lay low? Yes, May snapped. When Evelyn reared back in surprise, May's face softened again. She released a long breath. You'll be drawing enough speculation by rising to council member unexpectedly. You don't want anything else to come up. No, that's best. This will take time. She spoke quietly now, almost as if she were talking to herself. I'm going to redo the last half of May's dialogue, just because the description at the end has her lowering her energy. You'll be drawing enough speculation by rising to council member unexpectedly. You don't want anything else to come up. No, that's best. This will take time. She spoke quietly now, almost as if she were talking to herself. How long shall we lay low? Evelyn asked. As long as it takes. Evelyn fingered the edge of her sleeve. The reason she had truly come to speak with May in person lingered on the tip of her tongue. There's much to figure out, Evelyn said, feeling breathless and lightheaded and giddy all at the same time. Like when we shall put other plans in motion, or who my assistant shall be. May stopped mid-pace. Her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. Yes, she said. You'll have big decisions to make. We shall also need to... Sorry, decisions came out really loud. Yeah, it goes big decisions to make, which is awkward. I'm going to redo it. Mid-pace. Her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. Yes, she said. You'll have big decisions to make. We shall also need to start writing the law of the new central network so that we're prepared. You shan't take over as High Priestess for years, but we wouldn't want to miss the opportunity, would we? Might I ask you a question, May? May's eyes snapped back to Evelyn. Yes, she said, but she must have suspected something from the nervous tremor in Evelyn's tone, because her voice had softened. What is it, Evie? Would you be my assistant? A full smile wreathed May's face this time, one that Evelyn felt all the way to her bones. How wonderful to have made May so happy! After all the time May had spent teaching and mentoring her, Evelyn felt that giving such a gift back meant everything. I should be very happy to be your assistant council member. May dipped her head, and Evelyn leapt to her feet, another thrill of delight running through her. She was going to be a council member soon, wasn't she? Oh, thank you, May. I won't be so scared of all these new responsibilities if I know you'll be there to help me. Of course I will. May's smile grew wide, but still didn't quite extend. I paused there. Of course I will be. Of course I will. Oh, sorry, I recorded it wrong. I just dropped 2 words. Does it feel? Of course I will be. May's smile grew wide, but still didn't quite extend to her eyes. I'm always here to help you. Now let's talk about our plans, and I must insist you keep all of these details quiet, even from your friends. We don't want any bad publicity that we can avoid. Let's get started. I'll have Celia send up some fresh snacks. I love that villainous, heinous, evil May wants snacks. I gotta check one thing. So there's like a moment where I say bad publicity that I felt kind of sounded weird. Bad publicity. Bad publicity. I think it's okay. The problem when you have hard sounds like D and P, like DD together or DP or even DW, I have a hard time with those sometimes. It requires like a lot of lip formation and movement. Like da to not stutter it, and then to go from D to like a W or extend, like when you have to move your mouth out, actually sometimes makes it really tricky for me. So I do a lot of checking. But that was the end of chapter 17, which means we've done 4 chapters today, which was my goal. And we're like at 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I have to go eat lunch because I have a lot of writing to do. Bye, Garrett. Go audit a store. It's so fun to have you, my friend. Great timing. Hello, Teresa. Thank you all for coming. It was so fun to have so many of you. I'll be here again tomorrow at 11 o'clock if you want to come back. It's 11 o'clock Mountain Time if you're in the US. That's 10 o'clock Pacific and 11 o'clock Eastern if you're in the US or know the US. Thank you all for coming. This will also be on YouTube if you want to catch the other chapters. And we will see you hopefully tomorrow. Bye. I can't even ever find this button, you guys. It's the worst. There we go. See ya.